chapter of the Space Force Association and has a very interesting background. I believe you'll find it interesting. And I'm also wrapping up my series with retired Lieutenant General Bill LaCourie, whose career took him to a unique moment in history where he was one of the leaders who helped stand up the U.S. space.
Carl Sagan wrote
The fuel.
Carl Sagan.
Hi, I'm Bruce with SFA, and you've tuned in to the Space Power Radio Show. I've got two great guests today. Oscar Chacon, who has recently stood up the LA chapter of the Space Force Association and has a very interesting background. I believe you'll find it interesting. And I'm also wrapping up my series with retired Lieutenant General Bill LaCourie, whose career took him to a unique moment in history where he was one of the leaders who helped stand up the U.S. Space Force. Did I not say this was going to be a great show? It is, so stay tuned. Welcome to Space Power Radio Show. I'm here with Oscar Chacon, and he is the newly appointed leader of the LA chapter for the Space Force Association. Oscar, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Bruce.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show. I'm super excited to talk with you about things. I don't know a lot about what's going on the West Coast, but I know there's a lot of things happening in SFA. But before we get to that, I thought maybe we'd just get to know you a little bit. Now, I did a little bit of digging on the internet. The internet's a great tool, but sometimes it reveals things that shouldn't be revealed. I think in your case it was just normal stuff. So you you're the retired captain of the Space Force. So that's exciting stuff. I want to talk about that, and also you're a current leader at CACI, that company. So we'll get to both of those. But tell me about your Space Force career. Now, for you, it probably didn't start as Space Force, did it?
It did not. Yeah, it started in the Air Force, but taking a step back, it started at the Air Force Academy, which is where I went to school. Never thought I would end up joining the military, if I'm being completely honest. I grew up playing soccer in Los Angeles, so LA's home. I grew up about 20 minutes south of the base there in El Segundo. And I was getting recruited to a bunch of Ivy Leagues, these dream schools. I'm like, I'm going to be a doctor. This is going to be great. And then there were other plans. I got injured. Anyways, ended up going to the Air Force Academy. Loved it. Played soccer there. Had a really great career. Grew a lot as a person. Studied business management.
Let me jump in real quick. So, I mean, you just mentioned it casually. Just went to the Air Force Academy, but that's not a super easy thing to just decide to do. How did that work for you?
Yeah, so luckily I had a lot of mentors in my life who helped me understand what the academy meant. I had no idea that the military even had these service academies, if I'm being honest. No one in my family had served before me, so it was all new to me. But my club coach was an academy grad, and he played soccer there. So in high school, he was mentoring me. He's like, I think you'd be a great fit based on who you are, how you carry yourself. I went and visited the school on a recruiting trip, and I loved the guys, the soccer team. I decided to stay, not knowing entirely what it would look like. So yeah, did I want to quit a couple times while I was there? Yeah, and I think anybody who tells you they didn't is lying. So, but I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. Dealt with a lot of different adversity, from not playing to struggling, being away from home, all the normal things a college student goes through. But I found my way through it, just kept pushing. And I think that's really defined me throughout my different parts of my career. I can look back and reflect on my time at the academy, like, oh, I learned that then. So it's been really cool.
Yeah, and then so you went to the academy, and then what were your assignments? I'm a total outsider in this. So you come out of the academy, do you get to pick something you want to do, or is it kind of like, here's where you're going?
They give you the illusion of the idea that you get to pick, in the sense that you make your dream sheet, and your dream sheet is, from 1 to 10, here are the top 10 jobs I would like to do in the Air Force. So I did that, not knowing too much about active duty. I just put all the ones that were kind of business related, so acquisitions, finance, contracting, and then we don't know what magic happens behind the scenes of the academy, but they choose one for you. So I got acquisitions, which was my number one. And then based on my AFSC, I had a list of bases I could go to. and LA was one of those. So I just put all the ones in California because I wanted to be close to home. I have two younger brothers who are 11 and 6 now, so I really wanted to be around them. And I got my number one choice, went back to Los Angeles as an acquisition officer. Excited to be there, but had no idea what was in store for me.
Yeah, so I normally don't think of LA as being a place for an Air Force base. So what's the story there? It must be an office base, huh?
Yeah. It's I would probably say it's the smallest base out there. It's the size of it's a city block. It's 3 main buildings. It is attached across the street to an aerospace facility where we do a lot of our classified work there. But it is a small base. But the size of it doesn't correlate with the impact it has in the Space Force. So from an acquisition perspective, that base does it all from launches to software. It's pretty incredible what can be done there in the heart of Los Angeles and El Segundo. So if you drive by too quickly, you'll miss it for sure. I'm gonna go up and say that I didn't even know we had a base in Los Angeles when I was growing up. So it is small, and I think that's also a reason why I'm really enjoying this role with SFA, to increase that awareness with the community, because it is so important and pretty special and unique.
Yeah, that's cool stuff. So you were assigned there, and is that where you stayed your whole career, or and then how did you get to the Space Force?
Yeah, great question. So I started there and ended my career there before separating in 2023. So I did 5.5 years in Los Angeles. My career started in an interesting way. I got a call before I graduated the academy from a Lieutenant Colonel Bracey, and it was an interview to see if I would be able to join this task force, he was calling it, and it was going to be the best of the best, if you will, and he was trying to recruit the best lieutenants. And remember, he called every acquisition officer coming out of the academy, and he chose 2, and it was myself and one of my buddies who was a lacrosse player. And I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. Whatever this is, I'm excited for it. And with any new innovative group, there's a lot of challenges you face, from either lack of resources or just branding and name awareness to let's go fast and let's fail fast and move forward. So it was a really cool, unique experience. That ended up being EGS, Enterprise Ground Services, or what now is known as R2C2. So that was a group where I started as a second lieutenant. And I remember my boss, it was part of my 3rd day, he comes to me, he's like, hey, I need you to write 2 contracts for me. And I'm like, yes, sir. Go back to my computer, like Google, like, what is a DoD contract? Because I hadn't gotten any official training yet. I hadn't gone to the fundamentals of acquisition management training in Ohio yet. So learned a lot, man. I was enabled early, and that also drives me in what I do now at SFA with bringing in younger CGOs who might not know what to expect. Because I just experienced so much early on. And I think it really took my career to the next level, experiencing that. So that's where I started. And then I got handpicked to go to another innovative part of the Space Force called Section 31.
Wait a second. So during this time, though, there was the transition from the Air Force to Space Force?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay.
Yeah, so I started in 2018. So in 2019, I went over to the Space Force's first software factory, called Section 31. And it was started by 2 captains. I mean, it might have even been lieutenants then, but 2 captains who came over from Kessel Run on the Air Force side at Hanscom, and like, we're going to start this software factory here in Los Angeles. So I was able to help stand that up. I was a UI UX designer, so I was interviewing operators at the Combined Space Operations Center, going into their space, seeing how they worked, what monitors did you have up, what screens are you looking at, what alerts matter the most to you. And what I learned there was that we're fighting a war with Microsoft products. It was like, I get an email on Outlook, I track it in my Excel spreadsheet that I made, and then they update it on a PowerPoint that they then brief to the general. So I was like, wow, we need to digitize this. So part of my job was to help our engineers decide, what do I need to build? What does it need to look like? What does a workflow need to look like based on UI UX principles? So that was really unique. I got to see as an acquisition officer what an operator does, what challenges they have, and see the disconnect or the connections that needed to be made between acquisitions and operations. And I know that's a big thing with the Space Force right now, is bringing those two groups together to ideally provide better capabilities to the operator at the time they need it, and it does what they need it to do. So that was a unique experience. I ended up going from a second lieutenant there doing UI UX designer to a first lieutenant as the portfolio lead, managing 10 different teams, building 10 different applications. Again, a really unique experience for me at that young age to be leading 200 people. And a big part of that organization that made it successful was the culture. And that's something I love. I love culture, from my time at the academy, both as a cadet and as a captain on the soccer team, to my time as a UI UX designer on this product team, to now leading an entire portfolio. The why matters so much, and it was really cool to experience that and lead that in an organization in the military, because you don't always see it. It might be a word written on a wall, buzzwords that we say, but we might not know what does it actually look like in practice. And that's another reason why at SFA we're doing some cool things. I'll wait to share what those are, but around culture and connection on the base. And that's something that General Grant really wants us to focus on, that connection piece.
Yeah, that's exciting stuff. Let me ask you this. So when the transition from the Air Force to the Space Force, so we've had a chance on the show to talk to General LaCory, who was actually in DC. So he was kind of driving a lot of the policy, kind of pulling together policy in the role he happened to be in at that moment that turned into the Space Force. So he had kind of that front seat of things. But for you, what did you experience? Was it just like a different uniform and no big deal, or was it a big change?
It was an interesting time. I remember doing my oath to make the transition, wearing a mask in office, and it was only 5 of us. So
yeah.
So during COVID, so it felt like I was just switching a badge, but even then I'm working from home. I'm not really wearing a uniform all the time. So it was definitely an interesting time, but my lieutenant colonel at the time, he made it a really cool ceremony. We had our family Zoom in, had about 100 people online watching. We were in this little office with me and 2 others lined up in the back of the room. I personally thought it was so cool. In my eyes, I'm like, I will be an old man one day telling my grandchildren that I was one of the first Space Force officers, or I am probably the first Space Force officer from my hometown. And like, that is so cool to be a part of history. And at times you don't think that you're a part of history till later. So having that perspective in the moment, I think it just kind of gave me a greater sense of pride, for what it was and what it will be and could be at that time. So that's what it was like from a first lieutenant's perspective out in Los Angeles. It was exciting, it was new, but it was different because of COVID.
Yeah, that's right. I always forget that happened right. I mean, just literally right as COVID was happening. So yeah, that was pretty dramatic. Very interesting stuff, man. Thanks for sharing all that. So, you actually so you left the Space Force and then you took a role at a company called CACI, which is where you're at now. So what kinds of skills and experiences that you had in the Space Force, how did that translate into the civilian life?
Yeah, the transition is an interesting one, in the sense that I got to decide, who do I want to be without the uniform? And that's not something that most people are prepared for and prepared to answer. But joining CACI, I think it was a great place for me to land, 100%. Not only in the mission, but in the growth they wanted to make in the Space Force. So I joined CACI as a Space Force business development executive. I work remote here in Los Angeles, so I'm close to the action at SSC. And I get to support the mission in a different way. And I think when you take the uniform off, that's the question you try to answer the most, is like, how can I support what I'm used to? How can I support the mission? What does that look like? And for some, it's like, if I take the uniform off, I can't support the mission. And I would challenge that. And I have lived that in the sense that I can now support it just in a different way, whether it's at CACI and bringing capabilities to the Space Force, or in my role with SFA and really helping the Guardians directly. So far, I've been at CACI for 2 years. I've enjoyed it a bunch. I've been helping out on the enterprise IT, digital solutions, and our space lines of business, and just interacting with Guardians and trying to solve the problems. I think I learned that at Section 31 is focus on what matters, the mission, the operators, and the outcomes that whatever you deliver should be making. So,
Yeah, that's a quotable piece of wisdom there. Focus on what matters. I love that. Yeah, so you found your way to the Space Force Association somehow, some way. There's a story there, I'm sure. I'd love to hear it.
yeah, there's always a story, right? My story was at my first event that I joined, wearing the CACI badge, and it was the day before the Space Force Ball. And I was there with a coworker of mine, Matt Anderson, who I'm sure you're familiar with. He's our Space Force client exec. And I was there, and he introduced me to Christina Agnew, who's also a member of SFA LA chapter. And we were talking about getting more involved. And he's like, hey, we're going to be standing up this LA chapter. So there were 4 of us at the time who just kind of raised our hand and said, hey, we'll figure out how to stand up this chapter. So that was myself, Christina, Hector Pelayo, and Alonso Segura, and we're still working together now. And it was just us tackling things whenever we could. We're like, hey, we're throwing this event, who can attend? Hey, we need to respond to this email, who can respond? And it was a team effort. So that's how I started, not knowing exactly what I would get into. Like I said, it was my first day in industry, and I'm like, sure, it sounds great. I get to help Guardians, and it's turned into so much more. And that's another reason why I really love this job, is I wish that I, as a lieutenant, as a captain, knew what these associations were, knew how I could benefit from it, take advantage of those opportunities that we have. And I think because I experienced that, I can bring a different perspective to the table. One, as a former Guardian, active duty Guardian, and 2, a younger person who was hungry for, whether it was mentorship or exposure in general. I think a lot of it's just exposure. And then having been from LA, I didn't have the challenges that most people have who aren't from LA when they get stationed there. In Los Angeles, the base isn't right next to the on-base housing. On-base housing is 45 minutes south in San Pedro. So community-wise, it's hard to find. And because LA is so big, there's so much to do, those connections are a little harder to make. So with my SFA hat on, how can I start to create these environments where people can connect, where Guardians can connect, not only with each other, but with industry? I've learned as an acquisition officer, now separated in this BD role, that relationship between industry and the Guardians is important in order to deliver the best capabilities, those conversations, those relationships, all to understand what those problems are. So SFA has really answered a lot of these pain points that I've had as an active duty Guardian and in my transition in a really unique and cool way.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. I didn't realize base housing was so far from where Guardians actually work, but that is one of the strengths of the Space Force Association chapters, is that they're unique and they're shaped around that particular community, and it can easily be shaped just by someone like yourself stepping in and taking a leadership position there and just making it happen. Whereas at a company or in the Space Force, you don't have the opportunity just to do things the way it makes sense, right? There are processes. So yeah, that's interesting stuff. So tell me a little bit about the LA chapter that you are now leading. And by the way, congratulations on being selected for that. Just recent, just a few weeks ago, I guess.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, I remember my second day with the president title. I was getting all these calls, all these emails, and someone's like, "Well, it's been a busy 2 days, hasn't it?" I'm like, "Yes, it has." But it's all been great and positive. So much to share since taking on that role. So the first thing I want to share are our speed mentoring events. And we've had 5 of these now. And what you can think of it as is speed dating, but for mentorship. So we'll get senior guardians, airmen, and civilians, as well as industry members in a room with younger guardians, airmen, and civilians in the room as well. And then we do 10 minutes and just kind of rotate through. You get to have 4 to 5 different conversations, and you talk about mentorship. Part of that is also educational, where we teach folks how to be a mentee and how to be a mentor. And I think that's so important. I remember when I was active duty, I would get biannual feedback, and that was the only feedback I got because it was mandatory that we had to document. I was able to have mentors in my life, in my career, who I could go approach and build that relationship. So for those where it's harder, especially after COVID, where you're not in the office, we have to develop those skills for some folks. And I think when you start pouring into each other, you start to care more. And I've seen that at my time in Section 31. When people start to learn more about you as a human, it just makes everything flow a little bit better and meaningful. So speed mentoring events, those have been great. We do those in partnership with SSC. Dr. J.W. Womack is amazing. If you haven't heard him speak, I highly recommend trying to find something online or attending something in person. But he is now going and spreading that to other chapters. And we've established kind of a framework for the speed mentorship event that is repeatable. So other chapters will start doing the same here soon. Recently, we also had our first large event in LA in partnership with the Western region. It was our Innovation and Education Summit in partnership with SpaceWorks at the Bridge, and that was amazing. We had a panel which I moderated. It was my first time moderating a panel, which was super fun, really cool. Essentially, just talking about unique and innovative ways that Guardians can get the capabilities that they need. So we had the small business office there, we had SpaceWorks there, we had Colonel Menschner was our guest speaker, gave the opening remarks, and it was really cool. So a lot of big wins early on in this new chapter of my life as the president of the LA chapter, and we're looking to continue to grow, whether it's supporting SSC events for their birthdays or just socials monthly. And some STEM projects that we have in the works as well. So a lot of good coming out of this small base in Los Angeles.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people outside the Space Force don't even, like you mentioned, don't even know it's there.
Yeah.
So, I had no idea until I got involved in the Space Force Association. So super cool. So things coming up that you want to highlight, or maybe just kind of like your vision for the future for the chapter?
Yeah, our next mentorship event is in December. We're solidifying that actual date. So I know from my end, there's a lot of interest from industry to get involved. So we've been sharing everything on LinkedIn. That's our main go-to page. It is me typically behind the scenes typing everything out. So it is pretty personal. One of the roles, I hope we can get somebody who's really good at that marketing side of the house. But aside from that, nothing specific yet, nothing planned that I'd like to highlight. I think it's really cool that I get to go to these other chapters events. I'm going to one today here in Colorado Springs. It's a SFA event in partnership with the OTTI PEO, doing an industry day. So if there's nothing happening in LA, there's usually something happening in another chapter, and it's really cool to be able to go attend and grow those deeper bonds and see what other chapters are doing and bring that over to Los Angeles.
Absolutely. Stuff's going on all over the country in SFA chapters. I should get an actual count, but I think there's 30, maybe 40, maybe even more than that chapters around. And of course, we've got some international chapters as well. All right. So, Oscar, last thing. pick a just like a highlight of your Space Force career, something that stands out, and one of the early highlights of SFA.
Yeah, I think Space Force career-wise, the highlight I had was my first time going onto an operations floor at the CSPOC in Vandenberg. That was really a really unique experience, something that most acquisition officers, especially at that age, don't get to experience. And they just gave me a deeper sense of pride for the work that I do, and really tied the why together for me. Why am I managing this contract to develop software? It's like, okay, well, there's a face at the end of that who's going to be receiving that capability. So this is why it matters, and here's why I matter. In my time in SFA, I think it would be the first speed mentoring event we did, and that just ties to the culture, the pouring into people. I love that aspect of any job, of any environment. And specifically, there was a second lieutenant, and it was his first day on the job, and he went to the speed mentoring event. And his name was also Oscar, which was pretty cool. But he walked away and he told me this was the best first day ever. And as a new guardian, to hear that from hearing that from a new guardian, I'm like, that was such a special moment, because that will now solidify his career. That will now be, here is the expectation that people have of me. Here is the expectation I have of others. And people care about me. People show that they have a shared interest in my future, and that's what matters. That first touch point with folks, especially new guardians, is so important. So it's really cool to be able to create an environment where that can happen. And I think that's the biggest part. Just like in SFA, we just want to create these environments where these connections and these experiences can occur.
Yeah, exciting stuff. Creating culture. Yeah. We've been talking with Oscar Chicon. He is the new president for the LA chapter, and creating a great culture out there. Oscar, thanks for coming by the show.
Thanks for having me, Bruce. I appreciate it.
We'll be right back with the Space Power Show right after this.
The Space Force Association is a way you can get involved in the space community. Network with military, industry, and academic leaders, and support our Space Force and the Guardians who protect us. The SFA provides opportunities to research, inform, and advocate for a strong Space Force. SFA will keep you informed on the latest developments in space and our Space Force. Show your support. Sign up today at ussfa.org. That's ussfa.org.
All right, my guest is Lieutenant General Bill LaCourie, and we've been talking about just his career and in the Space Force. Started in the Air Force, into the Space Force, rising to the level of 3-star general, and we've just gotten to the point where you're back in Washington D.C. for one final time as a 3-star, and so then this is not too long ago, right? This is just, it feels like yesterday, I'm sure. But
almost 3 years at this point I've been retired.
3 years, is it really that long?
Yep. Now, when I got there, it was 5 years ago. So,
okay.
But, yeah, I retired in September of 22.
Yeah. So you, gosh, what just what an interesting time in history, and to be part of seeing the formation of an entire military branch in the United States and all kinds of things like that.
Incredibly rewarding.
It is neat. I'm going to ask you some questions about that in a bit, but I want to segue into, so a lot of global tensions going on right now. Just things are tense, and I always hear people, oh, the next war is going to be in space. You hear a lot of things thrown around like that, and I think everybody has a sense that space is critical for the United States in conflicts, but I don't know exactly what that means. So when we were talking about this before, actually. What does it mean when you think about a conflict in space? What are some things that come to mind?
Yeah, sure. Well, let's rewind just a little bit. So before the break, we were talking about this national space strategy that got published. Any of our national strategies that we produced during that time started with identifying what is the vital national interest for the United States. And so that strategy defined the vital national interest from a space perspective to be unfettered access and freedom to operate in space in order to advance our national security economic prosperity and scientific knowledge. And so that in and of itself was the North Star, if you will. It says, hey, space has not only become critical to our American way of war, but it's critical to our American way of life. I mean, there are very few things that people do, well, there are very few people that go through a day without touching space somehow or being affected by space somehow. Whether that's gassing up at the pump and paying there, that's all enabled by our GPS timing signal. All of the international banking transactions, stock market trades, those are all time sequenced based on the signal from GPS. Navigating in your car, obviously GPS. Weather forecast predictions, much of that is space-based. You name it. There are just so many things that are central to our American way of life that we created this service. The other reason we created it is because those things are so central and because we've gotten a great benefit as a military from this, what space provides. We have countries that see the benefits that we have, and they're actively pursuing capabilities that counter us. And those range from jammers that might jam communications, satellite communications, might jam the global positioning signal in certain areas of the world, to directed energy weapons. There have been several countries that have launched ground-based missiles into space and destroyed satellites. So there's a wide range of threats, and it's growing by day. And every year, the Director of National Intelligence testifies on the Hill about threats to the United States. The space portion of the document that gets produced by the DNI in their office, it gets bigger and bigger every year. And that's because there are countries out there, primarily led by China and Russia, that are developing these capabilities, and they have not only shown they're going to do this. Their doctrine, their stated intent is that in a conflict, space and cyber, for that matter, are likely to be kind of the two domains of the early part of the conflict, because they see the benefit that those two domains provide for all of the other domains. And so, the Ukraine conflict that has been ongoing is a prime example of that. Some of the very early moves by Russia were jamming satellite communications and cyber attacks. And that was because they knew the benefit that the Ukrainians would get and being able to command and control their forces, being able to be aware of what it was that Russian forces were doing, where were Russian forces massing, those types of things. And so space and cyber were the early domains of that conflict. And so I believe that will likely be the case for a long time to come. As conflicts happen, we're going to see that the early moves are going to be in space, and it could be using any of those threats that are out there. So now we've got a service that's built, purpose-built, and the mission of the United States Space Force is secure our nation's interests in, from, and to space. And so that means a whole new way of training. The stories that I told in the beginning about my undergraduate space training, Lieutenant LaQuarrie would not have the right amount of training for what needs to happen now. So a big lift for the Space Force right now is changing the way they do training, upping the infrastructure that we use to do training, so that our young guardians are ready when the nation calls upon them in whatever conflicts are presented to us. Ideally, we're so ready and so prepared and so well resourced that those adversaries that are building those capabilities think twice and say, you know what, this isn't really going to be successful for us. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that today. And so,
you think there's that level of deterrence exists out there today, or is it more equal?
I do think on some level there is. I think we have to continue to work at it. I don't think you have deterrence and then you have it forever. And it's a very nebulous thing. It's hard to point at. This is deterrence, but I am personally a believer that the best way to prevent warfare is to prepare for it and to be prepared again, so that the idea at the highest level, the idea of deterrence is that you have capability and resolve, and you message that, and so you message that to your adversary or the person that you are trying to deter, that they're not going to get the benefits that they look for if they took actions to enter a conflict, or that there would be costs if they took those actions. And the combination of those and messaging that, you can't just message it though, you actually have to have the capability, which is why Space Force budgets are incredibly important right now. because you have to have the capability as well. You have to have the training. You have to have the combat credible, ready forces in order to have that deterrent effect.
Yeah, a couple more questions. And by the way, I should tell you, I've taken a lot of your time here. I hope it's okay. Hope you have a few minutes left.
To the extent you're interested and your listeners are still interested, keep going.
Oh my goodness. Okay, we could be here days. But let me ask this. So capabilities that are deciding factors in space. I mean, I think there's kind of got the Star Wars, and got the X-wing fighters, and that's not space warfare. But there are some key things that should be deciding factors when you have a conflict in space, and I'm not sure what those are. What would those be?
Sure. Any domain of warfare. Let's start with domain awareness. You have to know and understand what is going on around you and in the environment you're in. So it's no different for space. One of our most critical missions is space domain awareness. So that means sensors, various phenomenologies, but sensors that are able to tell us not only where are we, the blue systems, but where are the red adversary systems? What types of systems are those? What are they doing? What does their normal day in the life look like? So that we can identify when something out of the ordinary is going on. And then in some cases, they're what we would call a gray system, or something we're not sure what it is. So you kind of have to develop a picture of that. So you have domain awareness, and then you have to have other capabilities. So for us, I mean, I've talked about a bunch of them throughout my career, but satellite communications is a critical capability for all the way to our most senior national decision makers, the President of the United States, Secretary of Defense. That is how they command and control our nuclear forces. Another part of a different level of deterrence is through satellite communications. When the president is flying on Air Force One and they're talking on secure calls, they're talking through satellite communications. So that's an example. All of our intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance assets, well, I shouldn't say all of them, many of our intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance assets are space-based, ever since back in the Eisenhower days when we needed to find a way to see beyond the Iron Curtain. Missile warning. So, there have been several recent events in the Middle East. Back in April of last year, as our airmen were doing a great job of helping defend Israel, shooting down drones. The other parts of the Joint Force are shooting down ballistic missiles. As a part of being able to shoot down ballistic missiles that are inbound for one of our allies, we've got to be able to warn our allies of the inbound missiles, and we have to warn our troops that are somewhere between the launching point and the impact point, or maybe targeted. And that is enabled by space. Our folks at Delta IV at Buckley Space Force Base did a great job in April for being able to warn those bases in the Middle East that were being targeted by these ballistic missiles, so that personnel could take cover in bunkers, and so that our missile defense systems the first tracks or the first information about where these threat missiles are headed come from space-based sensors, which then cue radars, which then cue weapon systems to be able to shoot those missiles out of the sky. And so we had great effect in all of those things. My son is a Strike Eagle pilot, was flying that night. Did a bunch of counter drone things, but he and his fellow service members at the base had opportunities where they had to go into bunkers because missiles were inbound, and the way that we were able to counter those started with space. And so that's yet another critical side of things, is the missile warning side of things.
Yeah, interesting. So, space and space conflict, is there such a thing? I mean, is that an issue?
Yeah, so absolutely. As a matter of fact, one of the first paragraphs of that national space strategy we talked about in 2018 and subsequent documents have all acknowledged that space has become a warfighting domain. It's not a question for debate anymore. There are weapon systems that are up there, as I was talking about, and so ideally we don't have conflict in space. Trust me, all of the people in the Space Force and any other domain are the ones rooting the most for that we don't have conflict in the respective domains. But it's our job to prepare in the event that it is there. And so, yeah, the reason we have a Space Force is because Space has become a warfighting domain. It's critical to our national interests, our way of life, our American way of war. And so we've got to be able to protect those space assets. The space assets that we have provide support to our joint force. Adversaries have space assets that are capable of targeting our joint force or helping to target through adversary intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. So our job as the Space Force is also to protect our joint peers from red space-based targeting and kill chains and those types of things. But again, ideally, we're not day-to-day having no kidding warfighting in space, but that doesn't take away the responsibility to prepare for it in the event that it's there. And certainly recent conflicts would indicate early moves will happen in space.
Yeah. So so you mentioned you just said the early moves in a conflict are space and cyber. So how do you win? I mean, what does winning look like in space in a conflict?
Sure. I mean, at the end of the day, I would say winning looks like not having conflict in space, because eventually some systems, both on blue and red side, are gonna be impacted, and then the people that lose are those on the ground that were benefiting from those, right? So winning looks like not having conflict in space, let's take this in a couple ways. So I just mentioned, there are countries who have space-based intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, and basically their kill chains, their ability to target our forces on the ground, on the ocean, in the air, is heavily enabled by space. So making sure that they are not able to close their kill chains to be able to target the joint force, that's an element of winning if you were forced into it. And so that could involve space activity. It could involve activity on the ground, for that matter, impacting space systems somewhere else. So it's not just the Space Force that kind of takes action here, but winning looks like protecting the joint force in the other operating domains. Winning looks like making sure that our global positioning system constellation is up and running still, allowing people to navigate around the globe, allowing trillions of dollars of international commerce to continue to flow. Winning is making sure that our intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance systems on the U.S. side are still able to see and track adversary or unknown activity. Winning looks like space-based environmental monitoring still being able to tell us when natural disasters may be coming. Winning looks like having the same satellites that provided that missile warning I was talking about also can provide support to firefighters when they're doing forest fighting and firefighting and those types of things. So winning looks like that continuing to work. Winning looks like convincing someone it's not a good day to bring conflict in from or to space. That's kind of how I would describe it.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. Let the days continue as they normally do. Well, gosh, General, this has been a tremendous conversation, and I don't know if you think about it like this, but I do. As I was kind of reviewing your career, from second lieutenant all the way to a 3-star general, it kind of traces the origin and the history of the Space Force, the U.S. Space Force, and so it's been just tremendous just to get your insights as you've kind of, had a front seat really all along the way, and certainly appreciate you taking the time and giving generously of your time for this. I've got one last question for you.
Sure. Before you ask, can I make one comment to what you just said? So you're exactly right. And so the way I would describe it personally is I was one person that was fortunate enough to be along this ride, but as I started in the beginning, what kept me in was being a part of a team and working on something bigger than myself. And so anybody that's been in the military will know your level of success is not based on the rank that you've achieved. It's kind of what impact did you have. And I have many good friends at all different ranks. We've kind of talked about officer ranks because that's how I grew up. But I mean, the backbone of our military is our enlisted force. They are leaders in there as well. And so there's a lot. I mean, you have to show some aptitude, but you have to be part of a team, and there's a good bit of luck and timing and things. And so I am one person who was very fortunate to take that path. I have no regrets, and it really was thrilling to be a part of it. So.
Yeah, and you're just a wonderful individual too. I have to. Been remiss. I know our CEO will say, "Why did you not ever mention the Space Force Association?" And so I'm going to mention it. You, sir, are on the board of directors for the Space Force Association. Give us a quick. How did you get looped into that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and as I said, I am fortunate to still be able to contribute, or I hope that I'm contributing. And one of the ways that I'm doing that is being a part of the Space Force Association. So Bill Wolf, as you alluded to, credit to Bill Wolf. There were a host of others that helped him kind of stand up this organization. He realized right away that since we're going to stand up a new service, we ought to have an organization that is laser focused, as the only mission is to support the Space Force. And so Bill took it upon himself and then cobbled together a group of individuals to stand this thing up. But I can say without a doubt that without Bill's leadership, dedication, and a ton of sacrifice, I'm sure we wouldn't have a Space Force Association. And so before I even retired, Bill was after me to kind of come on board and be a part of the board of directors. I had some different things going on in my life where I wasn't able to do that right away. But I called him about a year and a half ago and said, "Hey, I'm to the point where I've got some extra time and I would love to be a part of the team." And so that's how I kind of joined the board of directors and looking to help move things forward. At the end of the day, what kept me in the service was being able to support young airmen and guardians. And this is another way to do it, just with a slightly different uniform.
Yeah, yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, I think Bill Wolf's superpower is getting people involved. That's right. I think we've all had that.
And the Space Force Association is a huge volunteer organization. Anybody that's sitting out there thinking, how can I get involved? I would tell you, join the Space Force Association and volunteer, because nothing happens without this unbelievable group of volunteers, some of them active duty, some of them civilians, and the more volunteers we have, the more we can do for our Space Force. And so, yeah, it's a great organization.
And it's ussfa.org, by the way, is how you can, I think on every single web page of our website, it says join. So you just click on one of those buttons, it'll take you to the same spot that I think we all went to eventually. Last question.
Join and get involved.
Join and get involved, exactly. So you've talked about, I don't know if you can even pick one, but a fond memory of your time in the military, the Air Force and Space Force.
Yeah, it is very, very hard to pick one. I would say that anytime you have a chance to lead a team and to help individuals and then help a team kind of achieve their personal and professional goals, it's very rewarding for me. So it was a very special time leading the 50th Space Wing for those couple of years as the wing commander and the commander at Schriever, now Space Force Base. My squadron command time. First assignment is a special time because you've got all these friends that are lifelong friends. And then I would say, I had a chance, at the end of my career to be a part of some pretty impactful historical things. The kind of drafting of that national space strategy, which then led to the idea to stand up the service, and then the chance to be a part of it, a part of that first headquarters staff with General Raymond and all of my peers. Those are equally special. And I guarantee you I'm leaving out assignments that were equally special. I would not, in all honesty, I wouldn't have stayed in the service if I wasn't enjoying myself and feeling like I had an impact. And a huge part of enjoying myself was the amazing people that I worked with for 30 plus years at every single assignment.
Yeah, well said. We've been talking with retired Lieutenant General Bill LaCourie of the U.S. Space Force. And General, thank you for your time.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Bruce. Look forward to seeing you in Orlando and talking more.
Thank you, sir.
Take it easy.
And that's a wrap. I've had a great time talking to my two guests, Oscar Chacon and retired Lieutenant General Bill LaCourie. Wasn't it a good show? It was. I've enjoyed it very much. And by the way, if you're ever curious what my guests actually look like, you can find out just by going to the SFA website and searching for the Space Power Radio Show. It's recorded in both audio and video. And you can find it at ussfa.org. That's ussfa.org. Look forward to seeing you on the next show. Till then, I'm Bruce with SFA. Hi, I'm Bruce with SFA, and you've tuned in